Maybe nothing's certain except death and taxes, but we're certain this episode ain't about taxes. At 88, Shatzi Weisberger recently staged her own funeral.
A funeral is a funeral while I was still alive.
Charles Lucas, who's 3 years shy of a century, has buried 2 wives. Same cemetery, same plot.
They were close as friends.
But he bought long before the neighborhood got gentrified.
The price ranges from $4,500 all the way up to $19,880.
This man is still young. So why did he create an app that reminds us 5 times a day that we're gonna die?
It's very natural to want to forget that you're going to die. Don't do it. It's very dangerous.
This week, New Yorkers staying positive about the inevitable.
People are dying who never died before. That is a truism. But one thing that is not so self-evident as to be hardly worth mentioning is the way our attitudes about death have shifted. Time was when 6 feet of dirt and a pine box was all anyone could count on as they moved toward the eternal exit sign. But in this metropolis, with its ever-expanding global citizenry, the birthright of death rights has changed. And there are as many options for a send-off as there are custom combinations for the fine wares here in this showroom, where Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, they help people navigate engraving, lining, and generally selecting funeral caskets. But caskets are only one of the ways to go on your way out. In her New York Times bestseller, From Here to Eternity, Caitlin Doughty downloads the death rituals of disparate cultures, from a public funeral pyre in Colorado to Indonesia, where a tolling bell announces the start of the Ma Nene, an event held every 3 years where families dig up and dress their deceased loved ones in new clothes to honor their ancestors. Freshly dressed, they stunt for the gram, then go back into their freshly cleaned caskets until the next costume change 3 years later. Now, before you say gross, ask yourself, when was the last time you stopped in on Grandma or visited that great uncle of yours in Queens? Show me the manner in which a nation or community cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender sympathies of its people, their respect for the laws of the land, and their loyalty to high ideals. Or so thought British Prime Minister William Gladstone. But one man's cremation is another person's barbecue and pawpaw. So we ask that you keep an open mind as we go in on death.
The past 100 years or so, we don't even see people who are dying. People die in hospitals. It used to be people died at home. Now it's more of a mystery and associated with hospitals and pain.
Isn't death painful though?
Dying is not painful. Disease is painful. My name is Shatzi. When I was younger, people called me Shatzi. I did not like it. Shatzi in German means sweetheart, and Yiddish it means little treasure, and I didn't like it when I was younger.
Shatzi, Shatzi, I call you Shatzi 'cause I love you so.
I was born in Brooklyn in 1930. I'm 88 years old. It's interesting to grow old. Sometimes it feels very bizarre. I'm 88 years old. How could that be? How did that happen? Other times I feel like, oh my God, I'm so old. I was a registered nurse for 47 years. In nursing, the two things that interested me the most was coming into the world and leaving the world. I went through a whole process of being afraid of dying, just like most people. I had a funeral about 5 months ago. A funeral is a funeral while I was still alive. And the reason I decided to do that is because I wanted to share with people my process of what I went through and to help people to recognize that you can talk about death and dying and you can study it. And it was written up in the New York Times and I've become somewhat of a celebrity. People said they had a lot of fun. I had a full-size cardboard biodegradable coffin that people decorated. I had markers and glitter and pictures. I sing with the Brooklyn Women's Chorus, and the chorus came and we sang a bunch of songs and people loved it. My favorite song of all is over 100 years old. It's called Hard Times. People have always been afraid of death, of the unknown. I've been having a death cafe for over a year now, and a death cafe is a group of people coming together and talking about death and dying. And it started in Europe. Now there are hundreds all over the world.
Because we do know that we will all have an end of life. We just don't know when and how that will appear. And I don't tell you you need to believe in this.
I deviated a little bit because the traditional one is that there is no agenda, but I would start my death cafe with an agenda. Let's talk about doctor-assisted suicide. Let's talk about whatever. To me, the work that needs to be done is early work. People, when they're younger, coming together, whether at death cafes or whatever, and becoming more familiar, feeling more comfortable with the prospect of dying. The body knows how to die. But when you bombard it with all that stuff, you mess it up. So it doesn't just die, it gets dragged out so that the dying process is dragged out and the suffering is dragged out. Doctors don't explain that to people, and people want to live longer.
You don't know whose hands you're going to end up in, even for a little while. Is scary.
When I die,
do you mind if I ask how you would like to die?
I have very strong feelings of how I would like to die. I wish I could control it. I know I can't, but what I would like is to die here in my bed, to be in my bed, and to know I'm dying, not to die of a heart attack or, to suddenly. I'm so curious about it. I want to experience the dying process. And I want to have time for my friends to come and say goodbye. And I have a bequeath list. If you notice, all the things have little tags on them with people's names. So people have selected what they like of my stuff because I'm very attached to my stuff. So I want them to go to happy homes where people will take good care of them. And when I actually do die, I'm going to be in a gown that I just bought a few days ago, a very pretty cotton white gown. And then I'm going to be wrapped in a shroud, and all cotton. It's a tablecloth, actually. It's beautiful. And that's going to be my shroud. I'm going to be buried in the woods, and I feel so much better than what I originally was going to be cremated. My body will deteriorate, and it will nourish the soil, and something will grow. Grass, a tree maybe, flowers maybe. My body is just so precious at this point, and it's going to bring life into this world. So that really helped me to change my attitude towards death and dying enormously. I feel like I'm really educating people, and that feels very good. I'm very passionate about helping people become more comfortable with the whole process.
So we will share it. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming.
When is the next one?
It is the first.
Dying is not the end of life, it's the fulfillment of life. I suspect I'm going to be sad because I don't want to die. I have too much to do and life is too interesting, so I'd rather not die, but so I'll be sad and I'll probably be angry that I'm dying and I'll probably be afraid. I think I'll go through all those emotions, but hopefully I'll reach a point of acceptance and tranquility.
So this is your wall of fame over here.
So basically, the Wall of Fame just has pictures of employees, but the key to this whole Wall of Fame is this biggest casket we ever made. They made in the early 90s, late 80s. This was a 1,000-pound man that they built the casket for. It's about the size of a king-size mattress.
That's a custom job.
Custom-made casket. And it weighed, I think, close to 500 pounds, just the casket alone, or 400 pounds like that.
It is as wide as a king-size mattress.
King-size mattress.
Do you have a withered hand? A hand that cannot grope or hold? Do you have a withered hand? A hand that's weak instead of bold? How long have you been this way? Trying to decide when to take a stand. Knowing your weakness every day because you have a withered hand. She had said to me once, I'm going to go before you. You're going to live to be 100. I said, stop it. Virginia Dare Martin was my first wife. We were married in 1954. Had two beautiful daughters. She lived in Brooklyn, and I commuted from Connecticut, from Bridgeport to Brooklyn, you know, with the romance. The marriage took place in Brooklyn. The church is on Stuyvesant Avenue. She passed in '60. Having been traumatized by death, especially death of the wife, I had to start asking questions. You know, what do I do? Well, I didn't know anything about cemeteries, so I saw the undertaker. And he mentioned Evergreen. They took a look at Evergreen, said, okay. And they started talking about various spots. And they said, Beacon Hill. And that just kind of hit me right, Beacon Hill. So, Beacon Hill, okay. And I don't recall what the actual cost was, but I think the cost was under $500 at the time. And of course, 3 times that now.
I'm aware that people have a taboo about death. So a lot of people don't understand what's going on. It's their first time. It's a lot of information to absorb. So I just try to get them into a tranquil space where they're relaxed. This way they're absorbing what I'm telling them. do north of 2,000 burials a year here, and we still have availability. I have kids that are 6 years old and younger. Not in their lifetime, there will still be spaces available here. There's so many areas that are undeveloped, and there's areas that we developed that we haven't even opened yet. We have reclamation lots. Basically, you have to have an inactive area for 75 years plus. What we do then is we try to locate a living relative, any family that is associated with that area. Be that we can't find them, that a state gets it, they're the ones that release it back to us. The price ranges from 1 deep graves, $4,500, all the way up to $19,880, depending on where you're buried. We're non-sectorial, so you could be anyone, any religion, race can be buried here. At the end of the day, if you get a 3 deep grave, it'll save you $5,000 in the long run. Because what if you need to use 2 graves? Then a 3rd burial, which happens.
After a year, I met Elsa. She knew my wife. We socialized at gatherings together. Elsa had a boyfriend at the time. Didn't know how close they were. That was thrown out. So the question now is, when will something start happening? Is she thinking about it? I am. Over time, Elsa became more interested. More because of the girls than because of me. She liked the children. Things, I think, were a little warmer, getting a little serious. After about 6 months, must have been around Christmas, she helped me as far as what gifts to get them. They used to call her Mommy Elsa. After about a year, nuptials, we were married 57 years. 1961, until June 10th this year, when she passed.
And how did you decide to bury her next to Virginia?
They were close as friends. And I had not the slightest thought other than putting her there, since nothing had been purchased. After 57 years, my daughters were saying, a plot. I said, I have one. However, it was for me. And I said, I have to give it to Elsa. So you would have to get one for me. Because I have none now. I was talking to the funeral director. I said, now where am I going to go here? I said, can they go deeper? Can they, in what's left, put something else there? No. What you can do is be cremated, and they can put that here. So I said, nah, I have to think about that. I don't know if I want to go that way. To be somewhere else in Evergreen, I might as well be in Georgia or Maryland. I prefer to be in New York because my life has been here. It can be a lonely situation. I tried to keep it from being that. I miss her because she and I had these kinds of discussions. Reading poetry. I write poetry. It's the thing that keeps me going and that I enjoy.
A reminder of your own mortality. There's an app for that.
I believe that we're gonna die and we don't know when, and that we live better when we remember that. The idea for We Croak came out of meditation practice, actually. Death contemplation practice is actually very old. People have been doing it for thousands of years. And one day I stumbled upon the Bhutanese formulation that to be a happy person, just remind yourself you're gonna die 5 times a day. You know, a lot of the other ones I'd read about were like, sit over a corpse and watch it rot as you meditate for days, and that didn't seem like something I could do in my New York City life. Sorry about that. It's a really simple app. Notifications happen at any time. Don't forget you're gonna die. Swipe to see the quote. And then when you swipe, there's a quote from anyone who we thought said something wise about death or mortality. And then there's nothing else to do. And you decide what to do next with that in mind, that you're gonna die. It's very natural to want to forget that you're going to die. Don't do it. It's very dangerous. When we forget we're going to die, we get caught up in things that aren't true, because we are going to die. And we spend most of our lives being separated from what makes us happy, because we're hunting, we're seeking it. Or, you know, we're constantly reliving the past and, you know, resentments and wrongs, because we don't remember that our time is precious and we still have this moment. And my rule is, if I'm like really in a stressed out place and it catches me, I come down here and like look at the water. It kind of helps. The whole thing came about because I rented my extra room to Ian Thomas, who's an iOS developer, and he loved the idea. And he would make the code happen, and I would find all the quotes and tell people about it. Over 60,000 people in over 108 countries have decided to go on this journey and remind themselves 5 times a day. Every time you see a red dot pulse, someone has opened the app because they just received a reminder that they're going to die. He's excited. He hasn't been walked today, has he?
No, I walked in really briefly.
Time is limited and it's precious. The idea is just by looking at that and by holding it close, you're going to make decisions closer to your values.
Up, up.
And of course, it's just a randomized algorithm, but sometimes a quote will just happen at a moment when it reminds you to look up. Well, we're all gonna die. So the We Croak app is for everyone, from teenagers using it in high school to people in their 90s. And I love hearing from people saying like, hey, this gave me the courage to do this dream. So, you know, it's applicable wherever you are in life, because it's always true.
I heard about the We Croak app on the 10% Happier podcast, and Dan Harris interviewed Hansa Bergwall in March, and while I was listening to the podcast, I'd started downloading the app, and I've been using it ever since. When I first got the very first one, I just laughed because it's so funny to get a reminder saying, don't forget you're gonna die. After using the app for several months, I was thinking about death more, and I just had a lot more thoughts about it, and I wanted to talk about it with other people. So over the summer, I held a death party. My friends came over and we had conversations about death. The idea is that it's a big talk party as opposed to small talk, so small talk was not allowed, and when people came, they were very eager to talk about death.
I do a lot of communications and PR, mostly for food companies. And I teach a little bit of yoga, which is also more of a passion sort of thing than the main way I support myself. I love doing that. I don't think that technology has changed death so much. I think it's certainly changed life a lot. There's also the common first reaction that 5 times a day is too much. But we know that most people are in our app for less than 2 minutes a day. We have to consider how we use technology more conscientiously, ethically, morally, because how we interact with it has huge repercussions.
I think that a lot of people who might think about the app and think, I don't want to think about death, that's scary, but it's really the opposite. It's really life-affirming.
How are you going to live your values? How are you going to, be honest, have integrity? That you have this long-term vision, you might not get it. You might die first, and you have to be proud of every step you take along the way. So many people arrive to death situations having never even spoken about what their last wishes might be. When we don't remember our time is limited and precious, we tend to waste it on things we don't care about. You can do it with drugs and alcohol, TV, on your phone. You can do it at a job, hanging out with people you don't really like. There's a million ways to be lost in this world. And sometimes remembering that it's limited can jolt us out of that haze and be like, oh yeah, I wanted to do this with my life. Let's go.
Thanks for going in with us on death. We hope it reminded you that life is for the living. If you want to check it out again or any past episodes, meet us on the web at youtube.com/BRICTV. Bye now.